Hello, everyone, and wherever you are in the world today, welcome to this week's episode of our show, True Data Ops. I'm your host, Kent Graziano, the Data Warrior. Each week, we're going to bring you a podcast covering all things data ops with the people that are making data ops what it is today. Now, today we have a real special episode with actually two guests. First time we've had two guests on at the same time, so this will be fun. Back for his second week on the show is my good friend Justin Mullen, the CEO and co-founder of DataOps.live. And with him is Guy Adams, the CTO and co-founder of DataOps.live. Both gentlemen are co-authors of the book Data Ops for Dummies. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hi, Ken. Thanks for having me.
Good to be back on.
Yeah, great you guys have you guys here today. Now I know we got a lot to talk about here, but for the folks who are just tuning in and don't know you guys very well, I'd like to start off with just a little bit about your background in data ops and data management. So Justin, if you'd kick us off, please.
Yeah, so delighted. So look at Justin being sort of 30 years in IT and sort of taking that through three different eras. The first era was all around sort of dealing with data, but a lot around sort of IT service management and IT help desk and managing data coming from all of the IT systems and monitoring and all of that. Second sort of 10 years was all around sort of workflow, automation, BPM, and information management. So a lot of the reporting around the performance of people and that got me heavily into the early stages of sort of data marts and all of that. And I've been using sort of business objects and various different things for many years, from far longer than I remember, right back to Crystal Reports days when we were doing stuff against. You remember all of that. Then about 10 years ago, really started getting into, I suppose, hardcore data, which is much more around sort of building the core platforms for organizations. Spent a number of years doing that within a services business, met with Snowflake and realized that the world was changing. We moved away from a lot of the Hadoop stuff and everything else, and then met Guy, and Guy was a customer of ours, and then came to join us, and now we're joined at the hip on this journey of ours. So delighted to be here and great to talk things all data today. So,
all right, thanks, Justin. Guy.
Thanks, Kent. So yeah, I've been in the data world for getting on for 5 years now, but prior to that, my background is 20 years in building software engineering organizations. So I've taken many organizations on the agile DevOps CI/CD journey, seen the benefits of that many times over. Partway through that time, I started getting into cloud infrastructure, cloud automation, ultimately what became today Cloud Ops or SRE. And I watched as we took some of the principles from DevOps, from the software world, and we started applying them to our cloud infrastructure. And we started getting the same benefits of automation, of repeatability, of better governance, of change control. And when I came to the data world, it was kind of like stepping back in time. I was hearing customers say things like, let's spend a month building a QA environment, or let's allow 3 weeks to reset a dev environment to go into another 3 weeks worth of manual testing. And I remembered this. It was what we did 2 decades previously, and it was we were very glad to get shot of it. So that was really for me the spark that said, look, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a way of taking principles that we've learned from software, then looking at how we adapted those for cloud infrastructure, using that as our baseline, acknowledging that there are some very unique challenges for data, but let's not try and solve everything from scratch. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel. Let's use that history as a background, as our starting point, and then let's look at the unique challenges of data on top of that and solve specifically for those. And that was what set the philosophy. And Kent, you work with us on TrueDataOps.org as a microsite, and that that really underpins that philosophy. But also then the product that we subsequently built has been very much based on those principles.
Great, yeah. No, it's been an exciting journey, I know, for you, from having joined up back in the Datalytics days and dealing with all the satellite data and the machine data and time series data, and then now getting into really kind of shaping the industry around this idea of data ops. And it's been a great ride so far, and looking forward to where we're going in the future. Now, obviously, you guys are experts on data ops, but since it's the start of a new year, let's talk about your predictions. And I know we could dive into data ops and what it is and all that. We'll do that on other episodes of the show, but Let's get the year going. I know you guys have put a lot of thought to this about what do you think is going to happen in the world of data ops in 2023. So if you would, love it if you guys would share some of your top predictions with our audience today.
So let me, let me pick what I could, the first one, and we dropped it out in a blog recently. But I think one of the major ones is just the complete domination. We've seen the concept of data products really go mainstream over the last 2 years. And when we started talking about data products back in 2019, no one was talking about data products. They weren't thinking of data as a product at that stage. And when we started doing true data ops, and in the book, paragraph 1, line 1 talks about how to build a data product, so it's absolutely core to everything we think, and it's absolutely core to those principles that Guy brought from the last 20 years, which is treating data in the same way we treat software. So treat everything like a product. So I think we've seen that move forward over the last couple of years. We've seen amazingly big organizations like Roche and OneWeb and many others around the globe adopt this data product approach, and even, whether you like the name or not, this data mesh approach to things, this federated approach to building and managing data products and allowing data teams to be agile. So we've seen that become mainstream, but what we will see over 2023 is that moves into a much more specific definition of what a data product is. So we will see that now become a specific definition and a common definition across many different parties. So ISVs, SIs, the cloud data players, and various others. And it's almost become like a contract. So, in fact, some of our customers today, they're building data products and they're monetizing those products. So they're building data products out of satellite data and ground station data and this, that, and the other data. And then they're merging that all together to look at end-to-end link performance as a product. So they're building, lower level data products and then building products on those products. But then they're selling, access to those elements of the product. And once you turn that into a commercial a transaction, you've now got obligations around that data product. So you've got a name for it, you've got a description, you've got a set of expectations that you need to convey when they buy that product. You've got an expected level of performance of that product, an expected level of availability, completeness, quality of that, and all of that now is wrapped up in this thing as a product. So we will see this sort of definition come, and we're working on it, and Guy's working on it, and his team are working on it with other parties around how we describe and how we convey what someone actually gets whenever they subscribe to a product, whether it's under a commercial transaction or whether it's under an internal subscription to a service where it's much more related to internal parties and there's no commercial transaction. So it's that contract and that definition that we will see evolve and become mainstream over 2023. That's our prediction.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's a good one too, because like everything else, I think, my standard example in the world of data modeling is what's a customer? And we've been asking this question, how do you define a data product when someone says we're going to build data product? How do you define a data product? And there is at this point probably no industry standard definition. So it'll be great to see that here in 2023, that we start approaching something like an industry standard definition. So when we say data product, everybody knows what we're talking about.
I think just to build on that. So you said, Ken, when you sit down and build a data product, but I think what we're starting to see, and it's very much has analogies in the software world, sometimes there'll be a top-down requirement from the business. We need a data product that describes our customers' purchasing habits or our warehouse supply levels or whatever. But and those will exist. But there's another category of data product, which is already the ones that grow organically. The ones where Fred in marketing has grabbed a few bits of data to help them make a decision. And then, Sheila that sits next to Fred sees that and says, oh, can I have that? And now two people are using it. And then someone else in marketing is using it. but it's not, it's and that must have a different level of, Justin was talking about, that's got a different level of guarantees and different level of SLAs. So one of the things we've been advocating for a long time to try and encapsulate this is, maybe think about things as like certified versus community. A certified data product is, has a rubber stamp, it's owned by a department or a function, it's got strong SLAs, it's got strong guarantees, but they're not the only way to build data products. You're also going to have this bottoms-up approach where people are just building stuff that started out for them, then it grew to a few other people, and it doesn't mean it's less valid. It doesn't mean that it's not useful to other people, but you've got to be a little bit careful about making business decisions against it or building critical business processes on top of it, because if Fred's on holiday and that stops working, probably no one else knows how to fix that, and that's okay. Don't over-design for it. When it's at that level, that's the way it should be. And what you'll end up seeing is at some point, a community data product will fade away. It's not needed anymore. And at other points, a community data product will start being used by so many people, or will start being critical for the business, that now it gets promoted to a certified data product, and now it gets owned at a departmental level. And it doesn't matter whether Fred's on holiday, because 5 other people in the department also know how to maintain it, fix it if it breaks, and so on. So I think that sort of separation into what is a certified versus a more community data product, it's valuable because what it allows is agility. If you say to Fred, you can't do anything with data unless it meets these very strict, rigorous requirements, Fred's going to say, well, I only want to do something quick. I only need it for this afternoon. So he's not going to bother. And that's really stifling the innovation and the agility and the sharing. So you want to allow that. In fact, you want to encourage that, but without imposing too many structures and too many requirements on it, but then have a path for that to be certified when the business maybe becomes dependent on it later.
All right. Well, related to that, we got a question from William. What drives the purchasing of another organization's data products?
Yeah, that's a good one.
What have you guys seen in that area?
Well, obviously, it's a value-based decision, clearly, so it's a decision on, because typically if you're purchasing the data product from other places, like we've seen it in connected car data, we've seen it in satellite data, we've seen it in various others. So is the data that the other party is purchasing going to enrich some element of their business supply chain or the decision-making processes or the business decisions they're trying to take? So, if you're purchasing connected car data, like the movement of cars, you might be looking to understand where should I place my next outlet of a particular shop or a restaurant or something like that to understand what the likelihood success of that particular operation is. So where should I put my next McDonald's, or where should I put my next this, that, and the other? Or if it's going to enrich some element of your downstream data, we've seen satellite data being purchased by other parties. Where, in fact, Guy's probably better to answer this. Tell us the different applications of satellite data into third parties, for example.
Well, you've got all sorts of applications. I mean, so I have a long history in the satellite industry. A good one on the inbound is modern satellites are incredibly dynamic. You can refocus your coverage and your power and your footprint on a second-by-second basis. So I need to know, let's say I'm covering the Atlantic, where do I need to put all my capacity? Well, a big chunk of my consumers are aircraft. So where are the aircraft going to be? Well, I don't need to guess at that anymore. There's enormous data sets out there that tell me exactly where the aircraft move and where the concentrations are on different days of the week, on different months of the year. So I can buy in that data and I can use it to optimize exactly where I put my coverage, exactly where I put my power to make the best use of the resources I've got. But on the other side of things, satellite networks and communication networks have an enormous amount of data. For example, movement of ships. They track pretty much every ship in the world, and that information is available for ports, it's available for warehousing, it's available for people running supply chains, when are things going to be delayed. So the one commonality I see is in most industries that aren't very, very data heavy, people underestimate the value of their data. In almost every customer I've worked with, they say, I can see how I might make use of other people's data, but I can't see how anyone else would value my data. And almost without exception, once you start giving them an outside perspective, all of a sudden they say, wow, I suddenly see how this thing that I've taken for granted for a decade now has value to other people. And it's potentially, multi-million dollar value. And we're not talking about small amounts of money here. So I would very much encourage people, to have a very open mind about even stuff that you take for granted, what it might be worth to other people in completely different industries.
Yeah, it's really about thinking outside the box of what data could I use to augment the data that I already have to allow us to make better decisions and do whatever it is our organization needs to do. And William said he's calling it decision intelligence. Yeah, the value of decision intelligence. And so I think that's great. Well, okay, we're halfway through already, and we've only gotten through 2 of your predictions. So let's move on to the next one, guys.
Okay, so let's pick the word of 2022. I think observability. So we've seen that just become dominant in all sorts of places over the course of 2022, and to a reasonable extent, I suppose, through the back end of 2021. And observability has been around for a long time. I was involved in observability 25 years ago when we were doing observability of IT networks and the performance of how they were performing, and network monitoring and all of these things. We didn't call it observability at that stage, but it was exactly the same thing, and it was identification of incidents and root cause analysis and all of those sorts of things that were going on around that. And obviously Splunk and Datadog and various other things have really dominated that in that sphere. And that's become a real sort of key element, and that's something that's really key this period. And everyone's talking about observability, but what we'll see over the course and the prediction over this year is unified observability will become a term, and that is the combination of a lot of the observability data that we see coming out of different core applications. So in the data world, for example, we're seeing observability not so much around network incidents, but around data quality and data timeliness and frequency and all of these other things. But we also see observability around pipelines. We see observability around the cost and the usage and all of these things. So we'll see a lot of this observability that's being gathered in different places being unified. And we'll see the whole space, because it's such a core part of data operations in the same way just observability has been of IT operations. We expect to see observability come under that wider sphere of just data ops. Data ops is data operations at its core. It's not just the orchestration of a pipeline. It's everything that is end to end in terms of how those data operations run and are managed and are controlled and governed, and the agility that is delivered down. So what our prediction is that data observability will certainly see as a core element of data operations.
Excellent. Okay. Guy, next one.
So I guess one of my predictions for 2023 is machine learning and AI. And I say that reservedly because that's been on everybody's predictions for about 7 or 8 years, but it's never been on mine. And I've had a very, very healthy skepticism when people have talked about this, not because I don't believe in it, but because I believe that people have dramatically overestimated the point at which it will reach the average business user and be useful. Absolutely, for data scientists, it's been very relevant for a long time. And if you have a specific thing that you want to do and you have a team of data scientists, then fantastic. And there have been very specific use cases like time series anomaly detection, which have been commoditized and commoditized well. But actually putting the value of some of this stuff into the hands of a business user in a very meaningful way that they can consume, up until recently, I think has been a way off. And one of the trends that I've been tracking, and many others will as well, is some of the natural language processing, for example, around GPT-3. And all of a sudden, the ability for a business user to legitimately sit down in front of their own computer, describe in human readable terms what they want, and to have SQL code or Python code written for them, understanding their own data, their own database structure. And it's not going to be 100% every time, and that's not the goal, and that shouldn't be the target. But certainly, if that can be 95% right, that's an awful lot of heavy lifting. That's an awful lot of additional productivity. I'm pretty good at writing SQL statements, but I would still much rather have it written 95% of it written for me in 3 seconds, and me fine tune the last 5% than sit there trying to make sure I get the syntax right. Because it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing this, it's not a valuable use of my time. So I genuinely think that 2023 is going to be the year where, for very specific but very important use cases, ML and AI is actually going to land in the hands of business users, and they're going to be, yes, this is making an enormous difference to my everyday work.
This is quite a joke in our organization because he hates the words AI and ML, and we apply it to everything. And so this is like a unique year, Kent, where he's actually coming out and talking about it. If you mention AI and he just like look at you and pull away last year. Didn't want to hear none of it, But there's a big prediction for Guy this year.
And then let's separate out ML and AI as described by marketing people with the greatest respect, and ML and AI as it actually really genuinely exists, because they're quite different things.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, fits in with our true data ops approach of automation. And if we can get to the point where we can have pipelines and code and things generated through AI and machine learning algorithms, then again, we get closer to that goal of democratization, right? The democratization of the data and the data platforms, and empowering business users who, hopefully they understand the data, they understand the business needs, but don't have the technical skill necessarily to code it and know the nuances of inner and outer joins and all the things that we all love to do when we write SQL. There'll be a massive step forward to be able to do all that.
Massive in terms of agility, massive in terms of productivity, and just the assistance that will give to not just experienced engineers who just want to do it faster, but just think about all of those other engineers that are coming up and coming in and what could look into just, you're always trying to find something to repeat it from. And, so we're not talking about it writing everything, but assisting you and accelerating you into that piece. I think it's a massively strong prediction for this year.
Yep. All right. Next up, Justin.
Maybe following that, and what we talked about this on the predictions, is just around think about just the industry of that we've been in for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and just think about this: data engineers as a talent pool, as a job title, as positions or whatever, and they have been the most challenging people to find for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years, whenever you think about it, because they actually range from a whole load of, they've got a whole load of different skills that you're trying to get into them. They've got to have programming language skills, they've got to have Python and SQL, NoSQL databases, technologies like ELT and ETL, and they've got to think about infrastructure and cloud infrastructure. And so they're a very sort of widely skilled person, and there's no universities really, doing, courses in how to become a data engineer. You think about it, you've got data science courses, and you've got all of these different things going on, and they're generating people, but you don't have a data engineer's degree out there. And that's really been really challenging for organizations. It's also really challenging for organizations because they rely, and we rely so heavily on them. Today, there was a great image that Steve Huber and I were talking about yesterday that would come up on LinkedIn the other day, which was a picture of a whole lot of people. It was about 13 people in this image, and there was about 12 of them standing around the outside, described as product managers and AI and machine learning engineers and stakeholders and whatever. And there was one guy in a hole digging with a shovel, and he was the data engineer, okay? And this analogy is so true across organizations. You've got everyone else waiting on the data engineer, dependent on the data engineer, and so that's been a really, really difficult position thing. But I think we're changing that, and I think DataOps is changing that, and we think that is making a big difference, because it's allowing some really highly skilled data engineers, maybe 10% this guy had in his old software organizations, that are your sort of core hardcore DevOps engineers, and they're defining the pipelines and the approaches and the infrastructures and everything else. And what that's doing is making it easier for you to take on more and more people into the data product developer, the lower end data engineering roles, to build these pipelines and build these transformation processes and everything else. And we've seen it within customers. So DataOps is now enabling organizations that we've seen to build their pipelines and then start to employ younger people straight out of college with Python and with sequence skills and a base set of configuration skills. and them to become productive and pushing pipelines into production in weeks. Now, that's unheard of. If you go back, just a year or two before, you would never have anyone push into production almost within 6 months, and that would only be as part of someone else's cycle. So I think the prediction is that we will see DataOps, create the opportunity for more and more data engineering positions, and more of those positions to be fulfilled quicker, because we can take people in and we can create the capabilities that we need as we go along. So that's the prediction for 2023.
All right. Okay. So, Guy, I think we have time for one more.
Yeah. So if I'm gonna get one more, I think it has to be. It's a topic that I'm very, very passionate about, and that's the developer experience. When I came to the data world from a long history in the software world, one of the analyses I did was, how efficient are my data engineers compared to the software engineers I just left? And my conclusion was they're somewhere between 45 and 75% less efficient. And that's huge. I mean, that's
huge. Yeah.
Catastrophic for, and now you say you have 100 data engineers, and all of a sudden you're talking about, millions and millions and millions of dollars of business costs. So but also it's not just the business impact. No engineer, no matter what area they're in, likes to be slow, inefficient, laborious. Your engineers like creating value, like solving problems, not the laborious stuff. So I think the one thing that we've been really focused on in the last few months, and we released at the end of last year our cloud development environment as the first piece of this, is the data developer experience. And if you think back to what I was saying, we don't want to try and make a DataOps solution completely unique. We don't want to try and reinvent every wheel. There are extremely good developer experiences out there for software engineers. So let's look at what works great in the software world. Let's see how we adapt it to the data world, and let's try and push that out. So this whole concept of how do I get a data developer experience where they can create a sandbox in a few seconds. They can make changes locally in a couple of minutes. They can test those changes locally in a few seconds. They can get it all the way to the way they want. Then once they're finished, they can push that back to the system. They can have a pipeline run in a sandbox to check it all works seamlessly end to end. They don't have to spend any time setting up development environments, things like that. These are all things that in the software world people have just gotten used to. And you only really find out the value of it. Go to a software engineer and threaten to take away their favorite toolchain. You'll soon find out how valuable that is to them, because they will go down kicking and screaming to the bitter end. And yet data engineers have not had any of this. So trying to bring that developer experience from the software world to the data world, making all those adaptations as we go, which is what we're best at, it was a big focus for us at the end of last year. It's going to be a big focus for us through 2023. And I think the impact for individuals is going to be huge. They're going to be so much more productive, so much happier, so much more time spent doing what they love, but also the impact to the business. And obviously in current economic times, that's huge. If you can add 20, 30, 40% efficiency to your data engineering team, all of a sudden that pressure of doing more with the same amount of resources that invariably is coming now starts to become really actually quite practical.
Cool. Well, I think we started off saying, one of our goals and one of the things that we need to be achieving is more agility, right? And agility and governance, and having a good development environment for these data engineers, some of whom will be less experienced than others, is going to be critical to achieving those kind of goals in our vision of true data ops and where we're going to go with that. So I think that is pretty critical. If we're going to have all these data engineers and data ops engineers out there, we want them to be productive and contributing as much as possible, not hunting and pecking, as it were, through the thousands and thousands of lines of code to find a syntax error, right? So yeah, I think that's good. I hope that we see that prediction come true here in the next year. Now, one last thing for you guys, since you weren't on last week, is I hit Justin with this one right at the end last week too. Is hard to think this way, I think, sometimes, but if you weren't doing data, what would you do?
If I wasn't doing data, I'd probably be I'd probably be doing what I was doing prior to this. I'd be very much into the cloud infrastructure, cloud automation piece, and this it's such a big overlap now. You know, the big boundaries. It used to be there's data over here and cloud infrastructure over there. Used to be very separate areas. The boundaries are blurring between them. But you know, a lot of the stuff that makes me excited about data, and particularly data in the cloud, has come from that cloud infrastructure. You know, that separation of storage and compute, that elastic compute capability, all those things. You know, they all came from the cloud world. And there's still a lot of exciting, there's still a lot of exciting stuff to be done. Anyone that thinks, the cloud infrastructure world is done, really isn't reading the tea leaves very well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you didn't do anything with IT at all?
Yeah, if it wasn't IT related.
Oh, if it wasn't IT, I'd go and become a ski instructor somewhere.
Nordic or Alpine?
Oh, definitely Alpine.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not fit enough.
You need gravity to help you move, right?
Oh, 100%. I need a machine to get me up there and gravity to get me back down again.
Okay, there you go. Okay, all right, very good. All right. Well, thanks guys for being on the show today and being guests, and it's been great having you all on. And we might have to do another one because I know you got way more predictions than we were able to get through this time. But there is, I believe, a blog post out on DataOps.live that has them all written out. So for folks who want to see what else Justin and Guy are thinking about, you can check that out. And so thanks everyone for being here today and joining us. Next week we're gonna have a surprise guest, so keep an eye on our postings on LinkedIn and Twitter for the announcement who's going to be joining us on next week's show. I'm sure you won't want to miss it. We have a lot of exciting guests lined up and ready to come in and talk about this ever-changing world of data and data ops. So until next time, everyone, have a great week.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.